All right, everyone. Well, we're going to get started. I'm sure we'll have some late stragglers. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is another Hampden County Radio Association. Share the knowledge. Don't mind me, my voice, and my coughing. It's residual from my nasty cold I had the first week of February, and I can't get rid of the cough. But anyways, we've had lots of different and great speakers, some on Tuesdays, some on Thursdays, some technical, some not. And I've heard Andy speak. He's also one of my K2H ops, one of my top-notch K2H ops. And he was a great guy too. So Andy is going to talk on Andy's Ham Radio Linux. I forgot the exact name of it. Sorry, Linux in the Ham Shack. Either way. Um, so I'm going to give him the floor. I'm going to ask everybody to mute, or I will mute everybody. And you have the floor, Andy. It's all yours. And I think yeah, you can still share. So it's all yours, my friend.
Okay, great, Larry. Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, I see lots of nods. I guess that's a 5-9. So thank you very much. My name is Andy Stewart. I'm KB1OIQ, and I live in Westford, Massachusetts. And I'm happy to give you guys the talk tonight. Let me see if I can share the screen, and hopefully you'll be able to see it here. Okay, that should have done it.
Yep, we can
And
see
let
it,
me
and it
Okay,
looks
now
good.
that should be just the slides and not the extraneous stuff. So I used to call this talk Linux in Your Ham Shack, but I found out there's a bunch of guys, I think they're in Texas, and they have a podcast called Linux in the Ham Shack, and people were mixing up our two efforts. And I said, well, that's not fair to those guys. So I started calling the presentation what it is. It's Andy's Ham Radio Linux. And it's a software collection that I created many years ago that I've been distributing to the ham radio community. Just a brief bio about me. I've been in the hobby since '07, and I've gotten all the way up to the amateur extra class license and had a lot of fun with it. I was president of the local club, the Police Amateur Radio Team, otherwise known as part of Westford. I did that for about 10 years. I've done a couple of things on the section over the years. In 1997, when I lived in Worcester, I founded the Worcester Linux Users Group and had a lot of fun with that. That group is still active today with a lot of the same members that were there when I founded it. I don't go see those guys very often anymore. It's about a 45-minute drive, but they're still pretty active. I also did a local meetup group for quite a few years, and we had fun with that. Unfortunately, COVID killed that effort, but it was good while it lasted. And I had a brief stint, well, not so brief, I guess, teaching Linux as part of our adult education program when I lived in Chelmsford, the next town over. I've been using Linux since 1997, and by day, I'm a computer engineer. I simulate digital logic circuits and make sure they work correctly and so forth. So I quite literally get paid to break things. My more recent interests, antique radios have piqued my curiosity. I've done some electrical restoration on about a dozen radios, especially from the 20s and 30s, but a couple of them were as new as 1960s. And I haven't smoked any of them yet. I tried once or twice, but no, everything's in good working order. I'm not a woodworker, so I stay away from that part of it, but I like to do the internals. I like to homebrew things, kits. I love soldering kits together. The most recent one was the Morserino, which is a Morse code teaching kit, among other things. And I've been having fun practicing my Morse code and trying to get my speed up in head copy and so forth. But one project I did, I built myself a 1920s style regenerative receiver with pluggable coils, and it works all the way up to 10 megahertz. And I just copied the schematic, and many of the parts are older, some of them are newer, but it works and I have fun using it. I haven't been doing as much FT8 as of late, but it's something that I have done a lot of along with the grid tracker software, which I'll talk about later. When the weather gets nice, I like to go out and do some fox hunting. It's a great excuse to get outside and stomp around in the woods. And I've been paying attention to the M17 project, which is a free software digital voice. And of course, Andy's Ham Radio Linux. I try to come out with a new version once or maybe twice a year. So, what are the goals of Andy's Ham Radio Linux? Well, of course, I like to promote Linux to the community. Folks are often happy with the Apple computer they have or their Windows machine and whatnot. Most people at least know about Linux, but not everybody does. But there are some folks who are frustrated with what they're running and they'd like to try something different. So, this is an opportunity for them to do that and see if it's to their liking. But as part of the Linux and ham radio communities, there's a concept of giving back to the community, and this is a way that I can use my skills and give back to both communities. Maybe some Linux people will see this and decide to join us in the ham radio community, and vice versa. But I didn't want to, just invent it all from scratch. There's no reason to do that. So I build it on top of an existing Linux distribution, and it's called Ubuntu, and it's one of the more popular versions of Linux that's out there. Um, my goal was to put as much free and open source ham radio software on there as possible. Nothing proprietary. Well, A, because I'm somewhat anti-proprietary in my philosophy, but B, I don't have the legal right to distribute somebody else's proprietary software. So everything on there is free or open source or equivalently licensed, like the MIT license and so forth. The goal, and this is a lofty goal, everything just works. Well, we've all used computers for enough years. That's never quite true. I want to asymptotically approach that. So that whatever software is installed on there, you can just use it and focus on the radio hobby as opposed to focusing on, messing around with yet another computer. And so the idea of Andy's Ham Radio Linux began that way, and only the user community can decide how close I've come to that goal. So version 25A is the latest version that's out there, and I number them somewhat sequentially, and then minor versions have like an A or a B or a C. It's based on a flavor of Ubuntu. I've heard it called either Xubuntu or Xubuntu. There's some minor variations between the couple of flavors there, and it's based on version 22.04, which first came out just about 2 years ago, April in 2022. So I took that version and I did what's called remastering. So I took that version of Ubuntu software and I took out some of the software that I didn't think needed to be there, and I added ham radio software and packaged it up in such a way that folks could download it and use it. And what I did is I created an ISO file. So if you download that ISO file and run appropriate software, you can get that onto a USB thumb drive, put it in your computer, boot it, install it, whatever you wish to do. One way that folks often will get started is they'll download the ISO file, and then they will tell their version of VirtualBox or some other virtual computer software to point to the ISO file, and it acts just like it's connected to a DVD, and then it's in a full operating mode there. There's nothing holding it back. But typically these days, folks just put it on a USB thumb drive, plug it in, and try it. You can try it without erasing anything on your existing hard drive, and this would be for 64-bit computers. Your standard, a Windows PC is a 64-bit machine. I don't think this works on Apple hardware. I've never tried it, but if you have a machine that's, well, I'll say under 5 years old, but I've seen it work on 10-year-old machines, depending on what you want to do with it. As long as you have enough memory and disk space, you should be okay. There's a document that I created. It's called the Getting Started Guide. It's about a page of hints and kinks and ways to avoid the one bug that's still in there that I know about. So please be sure you read that guide before you get started. It will help you avoid a couple of problems that you would only see once when you do the install. So the target computer is any 64-bit machine, 10 years old or less. Make sure you have at least 4 GB of memory. It uses 20 GB in total after the installation, but I think the installer wants to see a hard drive that's a little bigger than that just to make it work right. It needs some room to work. Processor speed is not hugely an issue, but anything 10 years old or less is going to have plenty of horsepower, with the possible exception of things related to software-defined radio. Those tend to be fairly compute bound, and you may or may not have an issue depending on what you're trying to do. Networking is wired or wireless, and you do need USB for installation. Now, if you have a super ancient computer that's 64-bit, you might get away with installing it on a DVD, but I'm not sure that too many people have those anymore. So when you first boot up that USB thumb drive, so you put it in, you have to set your BIOS settings to boot off of the USB device. And when it boots up, you'll get to a screen that looks like this. So it looks like you've already logged in, you've got a background, you've got your icons on the desktop, which you can customize to get rid of them or keep them or whatever you want to do. Your date time across the top and your little taskbar at the bottom, all of which are fully customizable. You'll notice in the top left hand corner, there's a circle, and the character inside of it is supposed to be a rat. And if you push that circle, you will get the menu and see all the choices that are available. Also on this bar on the bottom, the panel, you can customize which programs are there. There's 6 different programs there now. And if you hover over them, you will get a pop-up that tells you what program is connected to that icon, and you can mix and match these to your liking. So did I mention that you should read the Getting Started guide? I don't know if I did or not. Hi. But yeah, please take a look at that. And if you have problems logging in after the installation, quite probably you didn't read it or you didn't follow it properly. There's one slightly unfortunate bug in the installation process, and this gets you by it. You do it exactly once. And if I knew how to fix it, I would. But unfortunately, all I can provide is a workaround, then you never have to deal with it again. So when you install it, so if I go back a couple of slides, you'll see this icon, the third one down on the left side. It says install, and if you click or double click that, depending on your computer, it will bring up the graphical interface, answer the questions, and it will go through and install all of the software. And the time that it takes to do that varies based on your computer. But when you log in, if you see here where it says other, that says that you didn't read the getting started or follow it correctly, and there is a way around it at this point. But if you followed it, instead of saying other, it would have the username that you specified as the name of your account. So if you encounter this window that says other, there's a default password called Ubuntu, and there's the username, I mean, Ubuntu, and the default password is empty. Just hit enter. And once you get logged in, you would right click the background to open a terminal window, and you would type this command that begins with sudo. And that runs a script that I put in there that will fix it so that you can log in correctly forevermore after that. And that gets around the installation bug. So I created the username Andy, and when I rebooted, I see this. So I say, okay, I did that part correctly. I type into the empty box here, the password that I chose, and click login. And then I end up here. So if you click the top blue circle on the left, you get a big menu like what is shown here. Now, most of the menuing comes straight from Ubuntu, and they have files that decide which program belongs in which menu and so forth. And it's fully customizable. But rather than mess with all of that, which can sometimes change when you install new programs or update things, I just created another menu called Andy's Ham Radio Linux. And underneath that, which you'll see in the big white box on the left, is all the categories that I created that organize the software the way I think it should be. Now, again, you can go in and customize that if you wish, but this way I don't mess around with anything that Ubuntu's done. I just added to it. So you can see that there's software in here from a bunch of different categories. There's antenna modeling, people who want to practice CW, digital modes, which encompasses a large amount of stuff. Quite a bit of documentation is included here. For people who want to do their own circuit boards and things like that, there's some electronic design files that are available for drawing schematics and doing board databases and that sort of thing. Propagation, we always want to know about propagation. A couple of different logging programs. Instead of WinLink, which is proprietary and only runs on Windows, we have an approximate equivalent in Linux called NBeams, and I'll talk more about that. Rig control software, satellites, and of course, a software-defined radio. So there's quite a bit in there. I'm not going to go over every single program and every single menu, but I want to give you a feel for just how much is in there, so that hopefully there'll be something to your liking. There's so many aspects of this hobby that you can't please everybody all the time, but I think there's a good smattering of stuff in here. So an awful lot of things in Linux are customizable. It's hard to think of something that isn't customizable. And some people view that as complexity, and other people view that as necessity. And you can tweak this thing to look and behave pretty much the way you want. And once you get it there, you'll probably leave it alone and never do it again. But I realize that some people might not like the penguin background. So I found a bunch of background files that are under open source licenses, and I put a few of those pictures in here for you. You can, of course, add to that as you wish, and then make that your background. So if we take a look, not sure why I picked that menu first, but okay. So within the Andy's Ham Radio Linux menu, there's documentation, and there's a few programs, not too many, that are command line programs where you actually type at a terminal window, enter the commands, enter the command arguments, and so forth. There's very few of those, and they are completely documented. You can click any one of these to see. So AA Analyzer, for example, is a program that I wrote that extracts data out of RigExpert AA analyzers, not the newer Zoom ones, but the older ones. And it'll bring up a text file with the documentation. The overwhelming majority of the programs are graphical based, and I encourage you, if you need help, to go to the website for that program. Not only will it have the latest documentation, but it will likely have some sort of an FAQ or a chat forum where you could learn how to use the software, figure out why you're having an issue, and so forth. My goal was to put in menus, a menu choice for everything that I installed, and make sure that when you click the button, the program comes up. I can't do much if the program is faulty and crashes under certain conditions and whatnot, but by and large, these things are pretty robust. So in the documentation area, you can click one of the buttons, and there's quite a few of these files that start with the word how to. And those are things that I created based on my experience doing different things with these programs. So I shared my experience here. I just created a bunch of text files for you, and you can look at them at your leisure. There's also a copy of the Getting Started guide, which you probably don't need at this point since you're logged in and doing things. Some people like to know, where did I get the source code? Most of the files come from Ubuntu's repository, which is Ubuntu's computer. It's a server that has all these different, they call them packages on there, and you download a package and install it, and that's how you modify your set of software. So I leave that there because some software is not from the Ubuntu repository. Some of it, I actually downloaded source code and compiled it for you, and then installed it for you so that you could use it without having to know how to do all those steps. The downfall of that is it's a little harder to upgrade those things. You would have to either do it yourself or wait until I come out with the next version of Andy's Ham Radio Linux in order to get updates to those things. Let's see what else is on here. So the top one that says manual dexterity solutions, I created that. My Elmer has Parkinson's, and he's losing his ability to do things with fine motor control and so forth, although his intellectual brain seems to be unaffected. And I created this document with him and other folks in mind, so that you can make certain aspects of the graphical interface bigger, because some folks' hands aren't quite so steady on the mouse and so forth. And so I put a bunch of things in there. How do you make fonts bigger and whatnot? So I'm hoping that this file and the solutions I found would be helpful to somebody. So I put it in here. Let's see what else is in here. There's release notes that tell you what I've changed between different versions of Andy's Ham Radio Linux. It's just a very high level description. And somebody wanted to know what versions of all this software are in there. So I created the versions file with that. So what I tried to do here in the menus is I tried to associate some kind of icon with each choice in the menu, and that the icon may or may not be the best. I'm not an artist. I don't really know how to create these things, but at least they've got something there as opposed to, a boring blank placeholder. In the antenna menu, for example, there's a couple of programs that would be of interest. XNEC 2C, of course, is a modeling program. FL MoxGen is something that I wrote for modeling Moxon rectangle antennas. Of course, we're supposed to do our RF exposure calculations, and this is a link to a website that lets us do that. And then, of course, FLAA is the GUI program that Dave Fries wrote. Dave Fries also wrote FLDigi and a whole bunch of other programs that start with FL. And when he saw what I had done for the Rig Expert analyzers, he wrote a graphical program to do it the same way. One of those I had done as a Perl script, and he just wrapped a GUI around it, so that was cool. There's Morse code programs in there that are really helpful to people, and then of course digital modes, and we'll go through some of those. So this is the Moxon rectangle program that I wrote. It looks exactly like a similar program written for Windows, but the source code is all new and different. The gentleman who wrote this for Windows, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name or call, but I contacted him and asked him if he would have any problem with me cloning the interface. And he said, no, not at all, no problem. So I did that with a clean room implementation, and came up with a program that if you want to build a Moxon rectangle antenna, you can. You just fill in the blanks with the center frequency, the wire size, and hit calculate. And well, pick your result unit first and then hit calculate, and it will tell you the dimensions that you need. Further, if you go up into the file menu, it'll print a PDF for you of this so that you can take it into your garage or wherever and build it. And the other thing that I have it doing is creating a file for the antenna modeling software, so you can see what the ideal characteristics would be of your antenna. So XNEC 2C, I did not write this program. This has been out there for years and years and years. But what I did is I fed the file to it that FL MoxGen created, and you can see three different views here. The far right view is the antenna with a vertical orientation on an XYZ plot. You can see the middle picture shows the approximate radiation pattern at, well, this one's set for 153 megahertz. You probably wouldn't run it that high, but that's what it would look like. But the far left window, you see two or three plots in the same window. One of them is front to back ratio. The other one is gain, and the last one at the bottom is the predicted SWR. So the hard work of entering all that data has been done for you because the file was created by the other program. And I've got that working for this style antenna. I have entered the data for other antennas. It's a bit arcane because it's based on a Fortran program that was written on punch cards decades ago, but it does work. So another program that I wrote is this one called Microfox Config, the GPL version. So there's a company out there called Bionics, and they have a product that they call Microfox. I think it's actually Microfox 2. It's a small device on the 2-meter band. It puts out, what is it, 15 milliwatts, and people use it for fox hunting. But you need a way to configure it to say, how often does it repeat the CW message? What is the CW message that it sends at that interval, and so forth. And this is a program that lets you do that. Now, I'm thankful to the folks at Bionics for telling me what bytes go into the device and what bytes go out of the device in order to do the programming. They didn't want to tell me all of the secrets of the device, but they told me enough that a program could be written to do it. And so now you can, if you want to do it on Linux, you can download this program. If you want to do it on Windows, they supply that software, which looks probably 98% like this one does. And like I said, fox hunting is a good time. I don't know if your club does that, but it can be a lot of fun. The window on the left is called XCWCP, and it's a Morse code practice program where it will give you random characters in 5-letter groups. And the idea is, you write down on a piece of paper what you heard and then compare it afterwards to what the computer has displayed, and see how you're doing. It doesn't have to be just letter groups. There's many other things that you can select in that drop-down menu that says letter groups. You change the speed, the tone, all kinds of things. What it doesn't do, it doesn't simulate static or fading. I think there's a Windows program called Rough Z that does that sort of thing. I've never used it, but if you want to practice CW in what might be considered ideal conditions, this program might be helpful to you. So other in the digital modes menu, there's all kinds of programs in there, and some of them may look familiar to you. The I call it the FL family of programs: FL Digi, FL ARQ, FL Amp, FL Message, Wrap. Those are all written by Dave Freese and company. W1HKJ. Is he in Alabama or Georgia? I always forget. He's down there somewhere. And a couple of years ago, he won the ARRL Technical Excellence Award for that year for all of the work that he's done over this many years writing these programs. And I believe they work on Windows and Mac as well as Linux. FL Digi, I'm sure, does. The rest, I'm not positive. But let's go over some of those. So if you do digital modes, you're probably familiar with WSJTX. It looks the same or pretty close to the same on both operating systems. You configure this to your radio, and of course you have the waterfall display on the bottom and the decoded display on top. And you click in the right places at the right times, and you can either answer somebody's CQ or send your own CQ, or if there's a pileup on a station, you might be able to tail end somebody if you do it right and make the contact. I've had a lot of fun playing with these, but honestly, I have more fun either talking to somebody by phone or my CW is on the slow side, but I still do it from time to time. I'm trying to get faster at it. So a program that acts as a companion program to WSJTX is called Grid Tracker. And as of version 25A of Andy's Ham Radio Linux, Grid Tracker is installed by default. And I have to say, this is a most excellent program. Some people believe that if the software is no cost, that it must be junk. And that's most definitely not true at all. And especially in the case of this program, this is really excellent. And it's for people who, oh, you could be running FT8, but you don't have to be, who want to manage what grids they've contacted, what grids do they need, and so forth. And previous to this, I thought that the only time people would want to do that is if they were going after the Fred Fish Award, for example, on 6 meters. And that's certainly one case where this software could be used, but there are many others. And this program and WSJTX talk to each other. And as you make contacts and such, it draws a really nice map for you that shows you what's going on in the band. And this photo, or this screenshot rather, doesn't really do it justice. This software looks fantastic on a large monitor. I have a, what's my monitor, 29 or 32 inch, I forget. It looks fantastic on that. And you can see, the day night line. You can see a green line there from USA over to roughly Europe. That's a QSO in progress, in this case in FT8 mode. And the small red boxes are areas that I've contacted and QSL'd. The yellow boxes are areas that I've contacted. No, that one's not contacted. That one's QSO's in progress, where I can't hear both sides of it. And there's a legend there that tells you what's going on. So there's a lot of information here. And it tells me that, well, I've gotten a bunch of stations on the coast of Australia, but not too much inland. And I guess that's not unusual. But it also decodes at the bottom of the screen who's out there. Is it a grid that you need, or is it a grid that hasn't been confirmed? And you can filter this bottom window in umpteen zillion ways to show whatever you'd like to show. It's really good software. It takes a little while to use it because there's a lot of stuff in there, but it's really excellent. So under electronic design, I have quite a few things. I'm a tinkerer. I like to build things. I like to fix things. I've written Arduino software. How many people remember the micro BitX radio that came out of India? A couple of years ago, I took that radio and built it and hacked the living daylights out of it electronically. And I added a voice synthesis chip to it, which unfortunately you can't buy anymore. And my goal was to make it work for visually impaired hams. And I did, but now that that chip's not available, I can't really share it with them. But I did an awful lot of programming on a board called an Arduino, which I hope folks have heard of. It's more than a microcontroller, but less than a single board computer. It has an awful lot of capabilities, and I rewrote probably 90% of the software that came with the microBitX to make it work with the voice synthesis chip and do some other things. And I learned a lot about how modern radios function by doing that. So that was a lot of fun. I put it out there as on SourceForge, which is where I distribute the Andy's Ham Radio Linux software. But probably only 5 or 6 people downloaded it, and that's not entirely surprising. For winding coils, there's a program to tell you roughly how many turns on a given form you would need. There's a couple of programs related to circuit board creation and schematic drawing and things of that nature. And I go through a couple of them in a little more detail. So let me move ahead here. So I don't know how many of you have programmed Arduino, but this is what the interface looks like. It looks a lot like C programming. It has some object-oriented capabilities to it if you write the code that way. And it's intended that there's pins on the board. You interface your circuit to those pins. You tell the software which pins are input, which pins are output, and then you can write your code to do blinky lights or whatever you want to do out there. The microBitX was a fairly sophisticated use of this board. There was a lot going on there, and it took I think I spent probably a year of hobby time writing that and perfecting that for the microBitX. Had a lot of fun doing it. So I found this program relatively recently, and it gets you in the ballpark for winding a coil on a particular form and seeing what the inductance might be. You can predict, you tell it the frequency of interest, and it'll tell you roughly how many turns on that form. And there's also something on the bottom left here. It talks about different ways that one might wind the coil. And of course, in so doing, it's going to change the number of turns. And so I found that a unique feature I hadn't previously seen for your open source software that did that. So I've used it a couple of times. It got me pretty close. So I haven't done schematics like this in probably 20 or 30 years, but there is occasion to do it from time to time. And I have no idea what this circuit is that's depicted here, but it gives you an example of drawing a schematic. The software will convert this to a variety of things that might be needed for parts of the downstream process. So let me stop and take a breath for a second while I take a drink of water here. Does anybody have any questions up to this point? Okay, all I can see are my slides. I can't see all of you, so but I don't hear any snoring, so I hope that's a good sign.
Andy, I have a question.
Yes, I heard a question.
I was curious if the performance on VirtualBox is, on a computer that would normally perform very well is acceptable.
I think it is. You might have a little bit of an issue with the USB I/O. It's been a little fussy to make that work with VirtualBox, but as far as compute bound stuff, it is probably just a little bit slower because it is a computer within a computer, but I haven't really found any big issues with it. But to be fair, I didn't use it for long in that mode before I decided, oh, just install it and try it that way. And most people have an older laptop laying around where they could do that. So my general answer would be it's probably a little bit slower, but I don't think it's objectionable.
Hey, Andy, this is Gary. I got two other questions, actually.
Okay.
One is, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, I have a couple of these $70 Evolve 3 Windows laptops that you see on the internet. They're very, they're like a netbook. Are they, number one, has anybody or have you known of people that have put your install on one of those, or are they just not enough memory in them to get it done?
I don't know. I don't know of anybody who has done it. That said, maybe lots of people have done it. I just don't know about it. If it has at least 4 gigabytes of memory and enough storage space, well over 20 gig, and these days that's not considered much.
Mm-hmm.
there's a fighting chance. Now, in that it's such a inexpensive machine, what did they do to get it down to that price point?
It's running. It's not a Pentium, but it's running one of these. The lower, maybe 1.5 gigahertz.
Probably a
Megahertz
Celeron,
processor.
probably a
Yeah,
Celeron
yeah.
stripped down
So
processor.
yeah, that's so one
Right.
of those.
So if you think about it, most of our ham radio programs are not compute bound. A logging program certainly doesn't need a whole lot of
Sure.
horsepower, as one example. Anything doing digital stuff like FT8 or PSK31 or something like that might have an issue or might not. I mean, if you think about it, PSK31's been around what, 10, 12 years, and the
Yeah.
computers then did it just fine. So I guess the answer is it depends, and why not try it?
Sounds like a plan. The other part two of the question is, I have a couple of Chromebooks that can run Linux, and I'm not sure what version of Linux they run, but is that something that would lend itself to your install?
Well, I think probably not. And the reason I say that is because when you go through the installation procedure, unless you want to dual boot it with Windows, I recommend that people just wipe the hard drive clean and install Andy's Ham Radio Linux. So whatever was on there is of no benefit. You can dual boot it. I mean, any version of Linux can dual boot with Windows, and that's okay because they don't step on each other. They're using distinctly different parts of the hard drive or SD card or whatever you use for storage medium.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Are there any other questions out there before I move on?
Andy, I have one quick question. I ran into the same problem you had with the obsolete voice synthesis chip, and was just wondering, have you found anything close to a replacement?
I have not found anything yet. The last time I looked was perhaps a year ago, and so I've not looked recently, but it was the EMIC2 chip that I was using,
Yeah.
which sounded a lot like Deck Talk of old, and all that work that went on at the University of Edinburgh. And I have not found anything even close to that, I'm afraid. I had hoped that I would be able to create something that visually impaired hams would be able to use, and I may have accomplished that, but I can't reproduce it in any quantity to be useful. I've got two of them. That's as far as it went.
Jurgen
Okay.
has a question too. Sorry, George.
Yeah. Can you run some of the software on a Raspberry Pi?
So that's an interesting question that many people have asked me. Can you run it on a Raspberry Pi? So as it turns out, and I've not told anybody this except you folks, you can tell others, I don't mind. About 3 days ago, my Raspberry Pi 5 showed up, and I booted it and connected via VNC and saw what was there. I don't think it would be too hard to port Andy's Ham Radio Linux to the Raspberry Pi 5. So I'm going to give it a try and see how that works. Does the Pi 5 have enough compute power to do all of this? I think it should, but I haven't actually tried it myself yet. And Pi 5 has only been out, what, a couple of months? It's not long. So I'm going to give it a try and see what happens. And I will report back to the community when I've discovered something.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Okay. Other questions before I move on? Okay,
Nope.
let me put
The floor is
all
yours,
right.
Andy.
Okay, so the slides should be back to normal here. So in the category of HF propagation, I put a few different programs in there. A couple of them you've probably seen. There's a link to PSK Reporter in there. The ham clock program is kind of handy that somebody wrote. The VOA cap is a pointer to their website, which is great for predicting propagation between 2 points. And there's a few others in there. Let's see which ones I go in detail. Okay, these two are quick ones. You've probably seen this solar.gif file on many different websites. I got permission from the author to include this in here. So when you click that link in the menu, it'll bring this up. Now it's a static copy from the instant that you clicked it. It doesn't update dynamically, but it gives you an idea of what's going on in the bands at a high level. Another program that I found out there that somebody wrote down below is called QGrid, and you can enter 2 points, and it will tell you latitude and longitude and bearing and distance. That's one way that you could decide which way to aim your antenna if you have one that's on a rotator, for example. It can come in handy for things like that. There are other ways to do it, but this program was out there and I figured I would include it and see if it was useful to anybody. So this is what the VOA cap looks like. It's a web page. Anybody can get to it. And the example that I put in here is the red marker and the right half of the screen is approximately where I am. And I said, okay, what would it take if I wanted to contact somebody in South Africa? So having put those 2 points on the map, and I said, okay, let's assume it's CW mode. Let's assume I'm running 1500 watts, which I'm not, but that was the example. You put in some information about your antennas, very high level information about the gain of the antenna and such. And then one of the things that it will generate is this circular looking display on the left, where if you'll notice down the middle, it's got the different bands, 10, 12, 15, 17, etc. And then around the outside is the time in UTC. So for example, if I were to take 2 o'clock UTC 0200 and look at the 30-meter band, I get a line that looks roughly orangish to me. And if you compare it to the legend at the bottom of the screen, it suggests that there's probably about a 90% probability of making this contact at 0200 UTC on the 30-meter band. And it's just a prediction. There's no guarantees in life, but it pretty much also tells you that at 0200 UTC on the 10-meter band, you probably don't have a prayer. Of course, Mother Nature might do something different with propagation that day and you might get lucky, but it seems quite improbable that you would make that contact on that band at that time. So there's other features of this tool. I believe there's a mode in there where you can say, for example, what's the best time of year for me to contact China or something, some DX that you're interested in, and you can get the monthly graphs for the year and decide which one looks like you've got the best chance to do that on some band of interest. So this is a nice program. It used to be a standalone program. Now it's on their website. This is a program that I now maintain, but I did not write it originally. This is a logging program called Xlog. It was originally written by a gentleman in the Netherlands who was done with it. He didn't want to throw it away. He didn't want the bits to rot, as it were. And he put out an email and said, hey, is there anybody out there that would like to take this over? Please send me an email with your interest and your qualifications. So I sent him an email because I was using this program before that. It's a fairly simple logger, casual operations for the most part. And a month later, he responded and said, yes, it's yours. And you're the only person in the world who responded. Which I found interesting. But mostly what I've done with this program is update it when the ADIF specification changes. There were really no bugs or anything to speak of. And so with this logging program, which I've used for 15 years now, you enter your basic QSO information on the left, and it will display, however many contacts it can display in your window size off on the right. You'll see HF, this is tabbed. So if you opened multiple files, you would see different tabs across here to show you those, and you can separate your logging that way. So for example, when I do 13 colonies in July, I have a separate log file just for that. And it would be a tab up here, K2H, 2024, whatever I call it. There is a way to search the log to find contacts. It stores the logs as a flat text file. So if you wanted to search it with Linux command line tools or anything else of that nature, you can, or you can do it graphically either way. This program does not go to the internet and look up a call sign and fill in boxes. There's another logger that I'll show in a minute that does that. I have used this log at field day, and I have used it the last several years to log what was it, Larry? Over 2,000 contacts for K2H, something of that order. And there's some keyboard shortcuts. If you know them, you can log things really fast with this program. CQR log is a more sophisticated program. This is a little more serious. There's a lot more information stored. There's a database backend as opposed to a flat text file. It will contact the internet and fill in a lot of these blanks for you. So if anybody ever called you your full first name as opposed to a nickname, or if they called you your first name and you go by your middle name, well, this is why, because it filled in the blanks from that database. And it's happened to me quite often. But there's all kinds of information you can store with this logger. I haven't used it. I know a couple of people who do, and they're really quite pleased with it. So the next set of menus is the NBeams software,
Andy?
which, yes, question.
Quick question on your last logger. Are these some of these programs like this one here? Can you just grab? I mean, when I'm already running Linux, I'm running just another. I'm running Linux Mint. Can I grab this program still without having to use your download?
Absolutely. If you, I don't know if you install programs on the command line or if you use a Synaptic Package Manager or something like that, but either way, you just have to know the name of the package, and most of the time, it's just the software name, CQR log. So if
Okay.
you go in and apt install CQR log or apt cache search it or something like that, you would see if it's in there, and it is, and then you could just install it on whatever Linux you're running that you're happy with.
Yeah, I just use Linux Mint, so.
Yep,
Okay.
many people do. It's a good flavor of Linux, and folks are like, wait a minute, I'm happy with this. It does everything I want. Why do I want to rip it all apart and put Andy stuff in? And that's a valid point. There's no need to do that. You can cherry pick the software that you wish to have installed.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Sure. Okay, so the NBeams software that we're going to talk about, there's 3 or 4 companion programs. They're all the FL programs from Dave Fries, W1HKJ. And then Sylpheed is an email program that interfaces nicely with these other ones. And I always forget what the acronym stands for, but it's Narrowband Emergency Messaging System. It's similar but different to WinLink. It's very different in that this is fully free and open source. It is not proprietary at all. It could, in theory, run on multiple operating systems, and maybe does. I think it actually does. Whereas WinLink, of course, only runs on Windows and excludes a part of the community in so doing. It's an open source software suite. If I could read my own notes, the third one there says it runs on all 3. So I guess it does. There's no infrastructure required. If I have a radio and you have a radio, we can make this work. There's no requirement to have some existing server working or something like that. I believe that's a requirement of the WinLink system. It's used by a lot of MCOM folks across the country. WinLink is as well. And it ties in with the Sylpheed email program for sending short emails via this mechanism. So let me back up. One of the other things it does, FL Message is one of the programs that it has, and all of those message forms where they count words and send message counts and whatever other fields they have in there. I'm not an MCOM person, but all of that is in the FL Message program, and coupling all these together lets you communicate that sort of thing back and forth. So the rig control menu, I have a couple of programs in here that assist with rig control. Sometimes rig control is built directly into the program, such as with WSJTX, but you can do it off on the side if you wish to. And let me just show a couple of programs here that do that. So this is a program that currently works on very recent models of ICOM radio, the 7300 and the 7610. I know for a fact it works with those. There's a couple of others, and if you look up the name of the software, WF View, you'd find out more information that the author presents. And what you see here is your standard waterfall and a display up above that gives you an idea of who's out there and where they are. If you move the cursor, it will retune your radio to that spot. If you go down at the bottom in the middle, approximately where it says mode, set the mode accordingly, and you can play with your radio through this interface. Now, none of the graphical interfaces are able to do everything that the radio does, but this has a pretty decent subset of things to start with. And I've used it a little bit. It works pretty well once you get it configured right. And so I put it in here to share with you folks. For people who are interested in satellites, there's a program called Fox Telem, and it does just that. It downloads telemetry information from a variety of Fox satellites from AMSAT, and you go through and pick and choose what you're doing and aim your antenna at the satellite. And if you receive the signal with sufficient quality, it'll pull the data out of it for you. I believe there's a way to send this information to AMSAT as well so that they can monitor the health of the satellites. I like this program. I used it a lot for a while there when I was playing with satellites. It's called gPredict. It's mature software. I don't know how much new development there is there, but it works very well. You can see on the map there, which does look a little distorted and squished, but if you change the window size, it would fix that. But you can see the footprint of a variety of satellites that were going over at the time. You can see where I have my home is approximately there on the map. And down below, you see, okay, well, in this case, SO50 was coming over in 19 minutes and 33 seconds. And when it came over, it would show on this graph that looks like a bullseye where the satellite is and where it's going, so you can see what's its path across your horizon or your sky. Is it directly overhead? Is it at the horizon? Where is it going to be? And then of course you can get information about the satellites. Where are they? What's their elevation relative to you? So on and so forth. This was very handy when I was doing things on the satellites to find out where they are. Is the pass going to be high enough for you to get your antenna to aim over the trees and that sort of thing. So software defined radio. This program called GNU Radio Companion is a really excellent, sophisticated piece of software, but they've managed to simplify the user interface so that you can take advantage of a lot of power without getting bogged down in the complexity of the user interface. So at a high level, the best way that I can think of to describe it is you can draw at the block diagram level a representation of your signal processing application. Now, it might be you take in an RF signal and you process it and you get sound in your speaker. Maybe you decode an AM broadcast station or an FM broadcast station. There's many, many, many things you can do with this. That's just scratching the surface. And the GNU Radio Companion will take your block diagram, and when you hit the go button, it will write Python code for you and then execute it. You don't have to know anything about Python to do this. And it supports a whole bunch of the different dongles that are out there for software defined radio, such as the RTL SDR dongle, Hack RF, and many, many, many others. There's lots of tutorials available online. This is not a simple piece of software. There's a lot of complexity and sophistication in this. And let me show you this picture, which I found this on the internet and I copied it into here and made it work. So you can see all these boxes are on here with lines that connect them and show the direction of data flow. And I won't go through every one of them, but the one on the far left, the big one, is a box that represents the RTL SDR dongle itself. So you plug in that dongle and it's represented here. And they say, well, take that signal and send it to a low pass filter, send it to a bunch of other boxes, decode the FM signal, and audio sync is a representation of your speakers in the computer. And so if you do this all correctly, and if you right click the boxes and set their parameters in the right way, before you know it, you have, in this case, a functioning FM radio receiver. And this is what the graphical interface looks like for that. So what I did is, the volume control, the volume sliders across the top. I have a drop-down menu for local FM radio stations. It's 3 or 4 of them in there. And you can see the way this is focused. There was a very strong FM radio station at 99.5 megahertz, WCRB. But you can also see the squared off digital information that was also transmitted with this station. So, and so you get two representations. One is this rectangular box that looks greenish and yellowish, and then the representation down below with the squiggly blue line and the white background. You can see there's clearly a very strong station right there at 99.5. You can slide this around, tune to different things, and so forth. So it was a proof of concept to me of how to use this tool. Another program for people who want to use those various SDR dongles is called GQRX. And it's a much simpler program. You plug in the dongle, you see where it says 162.525. I trust you'll recognize that station as NOAA Weather Radio. In the AM, no, is this one FM? That says FM. But you'll see that, and you can move your cursor to tune things in, set it to the correct mode, FM, AM, whatever it might be, and you can click the tab for audio and adjust that. And if you've set everything correctly, you will hear audio coming out your speaker. Now, this is a program I have not played with. It came out relatively recently, a year or two maybe, and it's called SDR Angel. And I don't know what all the different boxes and things do. It's kind of cool looking, but I haven't played with it. But the reason I include it is it's one of the first programs that I'm aware of that supports the M17 digital voice protocol. And so I figured I would put it in here both to let you know that it exists and also to give some advertising to the M17 team. So what's out there that I think is new and cool, or things that I at least know about? Well, we've had free digital voice in the ham radio community for 10 plus years now. A gentleman in Australia, David Rowe, created what's called Codec 2. And a codec, of course, is an encoder or and decoder to take your voice, digitize it, and then take a digital representation and turn it back to voice. This gentleman has an advanced degree in the subject, and it's widely believed that his thesis work from when he was in college is the prior art that protects his work from patents and other such things. So if one were to go to freedv.org, you could learn more information about Codec 2. What the M17 project did is they took the codec and wrapped some software around it in an attempt to mimic the things that are available in the D-Star world, for example, except not with D-Star, with Codec 2. So there's all manner of devices out there in the D-Star world. For the longest time, that was a proprietary protocol protected by patent. And so it was not palatable to a lot of the ham radio community who want things to be free and open source. That patent has expired, but in fact, there's really very little information out there for using D-Star short of buying devices that already have it. And that takes all the fun out of it for folks like me who want to get in the nuts and bolts and hack around with it and learn how it works and so on and so forth. So M17 is one of many ways to do that. And if you go to m17project.org, you can find out more information about it. If you search just for M17, you're likely to find some military weapon. That's not the website you want for this. So in January of last year, I bought a couple of those TYT MD380s, the DMR handhelds, and I say I liberated them because I did some hardware modifications to them that were documented on the M17 website. So I voided the warranty immediately while I was wearing my I Void Warranties t-shirt, by the way. And I did that, and I loaded new software inside the radio. So now I'm able to have digital voice communications with that pair of handhelds running the M17 protocol. And it's not perfect. There's new software out there that I haven't downloaded into those radios yet, but it worked. And it was done as a proof of concept of what could possibly be done with M17 and Codec 2. So as it turns out, the M17 project is led by a gentleman in Poland, but there are 2, 3, 4, I forget how many developers in Southern New Hampshire, and you will often see them at Nearfest. If you go in one of the buildings and look for the M17 banner, you can see those folks. They have their devices out front running demos. they're very patient with explaining things, and it's good stuff.
They were at the Ham Expo last year too.
Yes, indeed they were, and thank you for adding that, because they're around, and they're the software and the hardware are getting more and more mature by the day. A lot of effort has gone into this. So this is where I want to thank people for their interest in the software. Uh, I started distributing this in 2011, and I distributed it on a website called SourceForge, and I'll have a link for that momentarily. And of course, in the beginning, there weren't too many downloads of it. Nobody really knew about it, and it took time to get some traction out there. And I started with version 8. Well, you can tell I'm not a marketing person. I'm an engineer, so my numbering was sequential, and that it didn't necessarily line up with any Ubuntu versioning numbers and that sort of thing. But over time, and it took a couple of years to gain some traction, and at one point, I forget which one it was, version 18 perhaps, that was based on Ubuntu 14.04. A fellow that I've communicated with by email a few times asked if he could talk about Andy's Ham Radio Linux at Pacificon. And I said, sure, why not? And thank you for doing so. And then about a week later, there was a huge number of downloads from all over the country. And I can't help but wonder if it was people that heard about it through Pacificon. On another occasion, a gentleman that I know that lives in Milford, New Hampshire, he's big in the Linux community, and he travels to Brazil with some regularity, working with college students to try to get them to learn programming and IT skills to keep that sort of thing in their country and develop, reasonably paying jobs for folks down there, as opposed to sending money to Microsoft. With their economy, Microsoft software is very, very expensive for them. So this is attractive for those reasons. Well, one time he went to Brazil and talked about Andy's Ham Radio Linux. And a week later, I saw about 500 downloads, all from Brazil. So you never know where these people are that are going to try to download this. Ubuntu, of course, has multilingual support. So, lots and lots of people worldwide can and do use it. And version 25, which is the most recent version, that includes version 25 and 25A. As of earlier today, when I checked the count, it was at like 19,500 downloads for that in not quite 2 years. And so my next version that I will come out with sometime before I go to Dayton in May will be the last version based on Ubuntu 22.04, because 24.04 will be coming out in April. I usually let that percolate for a few months before I port Andy's Ham Radio Linux to it, because sometimes when they release it, there are bugs that take time to work out. And I want to wait for that to stabilize before I put the ham radio software in there. So this was a very pleasant surprise to me and completely unexpected. Back in March of 2022, I got an email from SourceForge with a little link on it, and it was congratulating me, and it should really congratulate all of you on 100,000 downloads of Andy's Ham Radio Linux. And I'm not sure if there's really that many people using it, or 3 or 4 people have bad downloads and they're persistent, or what's going on there. But I'm very, very thankful that there are so many people who at least they've tried it. I mean, I have no way of knowing how many people continue to use it, but I get some satisfaction in knowing that there is some interest in the community for this. I probably would create it anyway, but the fact that a lot of people seem to use it, it really does kind of make me happy. So I mentioned the SourceForge website. If you go to sourceforge.net, or you can abbreviate it SF, Sierra Foxtrot.net, you can get there. Search for my call sign. And not only will you find Andy's Ham Radio Linux, but you will find other programs that I've written for the Linux community that are free software. So I mentioned the MicroBitX work that I had done. I've done a couple of programs for Bionics devices. I collaborated with my club president, George KB1OIQ. He wrote a QST article talking about a way to learn CW, and he calls it Wordsworth. So you learn things a word at a time as opposed to a letter at a time. And I helped him with writing a couple of programs to allow folks to practice that. And then, of course, the AA Analyzer program, which is a Perl script that I wrote a long time ago for the older Rig Expert analyzers. I have yet to update that for the Zoom models. I really should do that sometime. So there's a couple of videos online. I've done this presentation for several groups, and some of them have made audio recordings, video recordings, and whatnot. And if you search YouTube, you'll find them. There's a group out there called Rat Pack, the Radio Amateur Training, Planning, and Activities Committee, and they have a very impressive library of talks given by lots of people on lots of ham radio related subjects. And if you go to the link that I put there, you'll find that. And there was a gentleman who calls himself the old tech guy, Kevin, KB9RLW, who did a very fair review of Andy's Ham Radio Linux, good, bad, ugly, warts, everything else. And I think it was totally fair. He did it, online and shared it with everybody. And so you can be guided by his experience too. So this is the last slide. Let me open it up for questions again.
I have a question, KC1IQ
Yes.
committee. Yeah, I've got, as you can see, I've got your software loaded from Ham Exposition last year. When the new version comes out, how do we go about upgrading?
So when the new version comes out, the procedure is that you should, out of caution, you should back up your home directory and any user directories that are underneath that and save it. And then when you install, you'll notice it's the Ubuntu installer just tweaked and customized for Andy's Ham Radio Linux. What you'll want to tell it to do is erase what's there and install fresh. Now, that's not supposed to touch the home area. And in my experience, it doesn't. But if you back it up, if it did something wrong or if you push the wrong button, you wouldn't lose all your data. So that's what I tell people to do. It's not an upgrade in the normal sense of an upgrade. That's actually very difficult to do and get right. So I have folks, wipe out the old version, put in the new version, and if you have to, put your home directory back, and then you're good to go. And that helps you avoid collecting all sorts of cruft files, which happen with any operating system over time.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure. Are there other questions from anybody out there?
All's quiet.
So
Everybody's thinking.
Okay. So I sent Larry a copy of the slides, and if he wishes to mail them to the group or post them or anything of that nature, that's totally cool with me. I encourage that. And
They will be up on the website probably sometime tomorrow.
okay, great. And thank you, Larry, for doing that. So I don't have anything else as far as the slides go. So let me stop sharing and send it back to you folks.
I do have a question, Andy.
Yes, go ahead, George.
Hi, this is George, KC1V. Of the SDR applications that you have in your package, are any of those transmit and receive, or are they just all receive applications?
The programs that are in there are all receive applications, as far as I know.
Except the radio companion.
Well, that one I believe can be configured for transmit. I haven't done it myself, but I know there's like the what's that guy, the Edis Research Board and other things that I believe are capable of very low power transmit, and I'm pretty sure that software supports that board.
Mm-hmm. But none of the others do.
I don't think so. The GQRX I don't believe does, but that's an area of SDR that I've not yet played with, is transmitting.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Great. This your talk has been completely recorded, and once I close Zoom down, it gets saved, and I send it to our web guru, and it'll be up on the HCRA library of videos also too. And I'll send you a link to that once it goes up to Andy, so you can have that also.
Great. Thank you, Larry.
So anybody else have any other questions? Okay, so just two little announcements for the club. The Zero Beat for March came out today. Ken puts a lot of work into it, so hopefully everybody will download it and read it. You can go to hcra.org, go to the newsletter section, and download the latest version, or any version prior, going back to 1948 in our newsletter library. There's a lot of good information every month, including this month. And our next meeting coming up is on Friday, March 2nd. We have Max W0MXX coming in from the Boston area, and he is going to talk on all sorts of things about weather balloons, from a form of fox hunting to finding the radio sondes to reprogramming them when they are found, and everything else. Max is a 13-year-old boy. His dad is bringing him in. I've heard him speak. His knowledge is amazing. He's part of the New England SciTech group, the Nest and the Stars, and a new ham, a new generation of hams that I highly recommend coming to the meeting. Let's see here. And starting last month, Marvin, W0MET, who's a new club member as of a couple months ago, is broadcasting our meetings on Zoom, and the link, if I haven't sent it out already, the link will be going out very soon, so that those that cannot attend will be able to do so. We'll be able to watch, and the meeting will get recorded also for our club library. So just going to do a last call of any questions for Andy or for anybody. Nope. Thank you very much, Andy. It's the second time I've heard you talk. While I'm a Windows guy, I still enjoy the meeting, and I still find your information. I still find it very interesting. One of these days, it'll bring my curiosity level up high enough to.
I'll keep working on you, Larry.
I just bought a Mac a couple months ago, so I can support Mac clients too.
That's okay. Larry, a couple things, Larry. First of all, I want to congratulate your whole club on hitting your 75th anniversary. That's really great. And secondly, I want to thank you and everybody else in the club for welcoming me and giving me the opportunity to give this talk. I had a lot of fun, and I hope, even if you don't all go out and use it tomorrow, I hope you learned something and enjoyed the time together.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for coming out tonight, or visiting us with us via Zoom tonight. I actually have another question for you, but that's separate. And everybody else here, thanks for joining us tonight. Hopefully, everybody learned something. Maybe some of you will dabble deeper into Linux or into it for the first time. You never know, and I'm sure Andy is available. His call is KB1OIQ. He's out in Eastern Mass. If you have any questions, look him up on QRZ or drop me an email. I'll give you his email address. So thanks for joining us. And my question to you is, when you were running the part group, what did you use to track your membership and everything?
I didn't track it. The treasurer tracked it, and the treasurer's been our treasurer for probably 20 years now, and he has his own unique way of tracking who's paid and the membership and so forth.
I'm curious if you've ever thought about writing a membership program for ham radio clubs.
I've not considered it. No, nobody's ever brought that one up to me before.
Well, consider it asked.
Okay, fair enough.
I'll catch
Let me think
up with
about that.
you. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just something we're going through with our club right now. It's
Sure.
our database is in Access, and the number of people that know Access are, let's just say, older than me, and there's not many of them out there. So
Okay.
we're thinking about different ways to manage them. And I've been talking to everybody, and I hear everything from people are still using index cards, if you can believe, to most clubs are using Excel. But I'm surprised. I mean, I know there's 150 clubs in New England. Who knows how many throughout the country? I'm surprised somebody hasn't written a program, but nobody knows of anything.
Interesting. Yeah, let's talk about that. We can brainstorm.
Sounds good. All right, everybody, have a good evening, and we'll see you at the meeting on Friday night, March 2nd, which is a week from this Friday. If you haven't done so yet, download and read Zero Beat. Have a good night. Thanks again, Andy.
Thanks.